My pregnant stepmom accused me of pushing her and had me thrown out of the house. Now, something bad has happened, and my father wants me back. I, 22F, have been living with my father, 55M, and stepmother, 38F, for the past 5 years, ever since my mom passed away when I was 17. The transition wasn't easy, but I tried my best to adapt to our new family dynamic. When Linda first moved in, I made efforts to welcome her. I helped her unpack, showed her around the house, and even offered to cook dinner for the 3 of us. But it quickly became apparent that Linda wasn't interested in forming a bond with me. She would barely acknowledge my presence, often speaking to my father as if I wasn't in the room. As weeks turned into months, Linda's attitude towards me grew increasingly unpleasant. She would complain to my father about minor things, like how I loaded the dishwasher or the way I folded laundry. At first, I thought she was just particular about housework, so I tried harder to meet her standards. But no matter what I did, it was never good enough. She'd rub her belly and say things like, "Finally, we'll have a real family," or, "I can't wait for your father to have a child of his own." Her comments stung, especially because I knew how much my father loved me. But he never contradicted her, and I started to doubt my place in the family. Linda began treating me like an outsider in my own home. My father would usually change the subject, avoiding conflict, but his silence hurt almost as much as Linda's words. I got a part-time job at a local bookstore to contribute to household expenses, hoping it would ease some of the tension. But Linda just used it as another opportunity to criticize me, saying I wasn't working enough hours or that I should be pursuing a real career instead of playing shop. Whenever I tried to talk to him about how I was feeling, he'd brush it off, saying I was imagining things, or that I needed to try harder to get along with Linda. It felt like I was losing him, bit by bit. Last week, Linda's family organized a baby shower at our house. I offered to help with the preparations, but Linda insisted she and her sisters had everything under control. On the day of the party, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Linda's family and friends filled the house, cooing over her belly and exchanging knowing looks when I walked by. I tried to stay out of the way, spending most of the time in the kitchen. I was fixing myself a sandwich when I heard a commotion from the living room. Curious, I stepped out to see what was happening. The scene that greeted me was chaos. Linda was on the floor, clutching her stomach and sobbing. Her sister was kneeling beside her, glaring at me with pure hatred. Before I could ask what had happened, Linda pointed at me and wailed, "She pushed me! Sarah pushed me!" I was stunned. I hadn't even been in the room, let alone anywhere near Linda. But before I could defend myself, everyone started shouting. Linda's family surrounded her, some helping her up, others advancing towards me with clenched fists. My father pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of fury I had never seen before. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice shaking with anger. "How could you, Sarah? How could you hurt Linda and the baby?" I tried to explain that I had been in the kitchen, that I hadn't touched Linda, but no one was listening. Linda's sisters were calling me names: monster, psychopath, jealous brat. Someone suggested calling the police. Through it all, Linda kept sobbing, playing the victim perfectly. In the midst of the chaos, my father made a decision that shattered my world. He turned to me, his eyes cold, and said, "Pack a bag. You're going to stay with Aunt Marie until we sort this out. I can't have you here if you're a danger to Linda and the baby." I tried to keep busy. I helped Aunt Marie around the house, picked up some extra shifts at the bookstore, and even started looking into online classes. But everything felt temporary, like I was just going through the motions. One evening, about a month after I'd been sent away, Aunt Marie came into my room with a strange look on her face. She sat down on the bed next to me and took my hand. I could tell something was wrong. Aunt Marie told me that my father had called. At first, my heart leapt. Was he finally ready to listen to me? But then I saw the sadness in my aunt's eyes, and I knew this wasn't going to be a happy conversation. She explained that my father wanted me to pack my bags. He was coming to pick me up the next day. He had also said he was sorry, but Aunt Marie didn't know what exactly he was apologizing for. Then came the shocking news. Linda had slipped on the stairs at home and had a miscarriage. My first reaction was disbelief, followed quickly by fear. I was afraid I would somehow be blamed for this too, even though I hadn't been anywhere near the house. I spent that night tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Part of me was relieved that I might finally be able to go home and clear my name. But another part was terrified of what I might be walking into. The next morning, I packed my bags with shaking hands. Aunt Marie tried to reassure me, but I could tell she was worried too. We waited in tense silence for my father to arrive. When I heard the car pull up, my heart started racing. I watched from the window as my father got out of the car. He looked tired and older than I remembered. When he rang the doorbell, I hung back, letting Aunt Marie answer it. I heard them talking quietly in the hallway for a few minutes before my father came into the living room where I was waiting. When he saw me, his face crumpled. To my shock, he rushed forward and pulled me into a tight hug. My father apologized over and over. He told me he was so sorry for not believing me, for sending me away, for letting things get so bad. At first, I was too stunned to react. Then, slowly, I hugged him back, feeling tears start to fall. When we finally pulled apart, my father explained what had happened. After Linda's accident and miscarriage, she had been devastated. In her grief, she had confessed to my father that she had lied about me pushing her at the baby shower. She told him that she had made up the whole thing because she wanted me out of the house. Linda admitted that she had been jealous of my relationship with my father. She felt like an outsider in our family and thought that if I were gone, she would finally have my father's full attention. But after losing the baby, she realized how wrong she had been. She told my father that she felt like she was being punished for hurting an innocent person. I listened to all of this in a shock. Trust, once broken, takes a long time to rebuild. But I'm hopeful for our future as a family. This experience has taught me the importance of communication, forgiveness, and standing up for the truth. To everyone who supported me during that difficult time, thank you. Your kindness and advice helped me get through some of the darkest days of my life. Over the next few weeks, we all worked on rebuilding our relationships. My father made a real effort to spend time with me, to listen to my concerns and stand up for me when needed. Linda and I started having weekly coffee dates where we would talk honestly about our feelings and fears. It wasn't easy and there were plenty of awkward moments and setbacks. But slowly, things started to improve. Linda began to open up about her own insecurities and her grief over losing the baby. I found myself feeling sympathy for her, understanding a little better why she had acted the way she did. As for me, I started to feel more secure in my place in the family. My father reassured me repeatedly that I was his daughter, and that nothing would ever change that. He even started talking about setting up a college fund for me, something Linda surprisingly supported. Now, 3 months after that terrible day at the baby shower, things are better than they've been in years. Our house feels like a home again,